Most people think the difference between a comfortable retirement and an anxious one comes down to income. It doesn't. It comes down to 1 decade, and a rule that changes the price of everything inside it. That rule is called the $4 rule. Every dollar you redirect away from retirement savings between 40 and 50 doesn't cost you $1 at 65. It costs you 4. And the decisions that feel most deserved during this window, the ones that look exactly like success, are quietly the most expensive ones you'll ever make. I'm not going to tell you to cut your coffee or sacrifice your lifestyle. I'm going to show you the actual receipt, because the gap between these two retirements isn't about income, it's about 1 decade of math, and you're inside it right now. Think about the last time you calculated the cost of a major financial decision, a new car, a bigger house, maybe a renovation you've been putting off. When you ran the numbers, you probably asked one question: can I afford the monthly payment? That question isn't wrong, but it answers the wrong problem. Here's the math nobody draws out for you. If you invest $1 today, at 40 years old, into a diversified index fund, that dollar becomes approximately $4 by the time you turn 65. That's not optimism. That's the historical average of market returns over a 20 to 25-year compounding window. $1, $4. That's the $4 rule. Now, watch what happens when you wait. Invest that same dollar at 45, and it becomes about $2.90 at 65. Wait until 50, and it's $2.50. By 55, that dollar is worth $2. The window doesn't close gradually. It closes exponentially. And there's a reason your 40s are the precise decade where this multiplier peaks. 3 things are happening simultaneously right now that will never align again. Your income has reached its maximum. For most professionals, peak earning years fall between 42 and 55. The absolute dollars coming in are the highest they've ever been, and the highest they're likely to ever be again. Your expenses have started to stabilize. Children who were expensive are getting older and more independent. The mortgage on the house you stretched to afford fits more comfortably now. The career wardrobe and commuting costs are established. The big expenses are leveling off, which means for the first time there's genuine slack in your monthly budget. And where it goes will determine the next 30 years. And you still have 20 to 25 years of compounding time in front of you. Peak income, stabilizing expenses, maximum compounding window. These 3 forces will never overlap again. The question isn't whether you have money to invest right now. The question is where that money is quietly going. Before any financial decision this decade, run one calculation first. For a one-time expense, a lump sum, a renovation, a bonus you're about to spend instead of invest, take that number and multiply by 4. That is the retirement wealth you are trading for it. $1 today becomes $4 at 65. That's the $4 rule applied to its natural home, a single redirected dollar. For decisions that redirect monthly cash flow, a mortgage upgrade, a car lease, a recurring cost, the math is more powerful than a simple multiplier. Take the monthly amount and compound it forward at 8% over 20 to 25 years. Write that number down before you say yes to anything. Once you see it, the decision becomes a completely different conversation. Here's where this gets harder to hear. Because the decisions that activate the $4 rule the most aren't reckless ones. They're not gambling or impulse spending. They're the 3 decisions that look exactly like success from the outside. The first is the house upgrade. You're in your early 40s. The neighborhood you bought into feels slightly small now. Your income has grown. Your friends have moved to nicer places. The kids are in middle school, and a larger home, maybe a better school district, feels both practical and, frankly, earned. So you move from a $350,000 home to a $600,000 one. The additional mortgage, the property taxes, the insurance, the utilities, it adds roughly $1,500 to $2,000 per month to your fixed costs. That doesn't sound catastrophic. You can handle an extra $1,800 per month, but run the actual numbers. $1,800 per month, compounded at historical market returns over the next 20 to 25 years, represents somewhere between $900,000 and $1.3 million in retirement wealth you won't have. Not the monthly payment, not the annual cost. The compounded total over your peak compounding window. That is your real price tag. You didn't feel like you were spending $1 million. You were signing a mortgage. But the compound interest calculator doesn't register the difference. That is the gratification premium. The silent 4 times markup on every dollar of lifestyle you buy during the decade when your compounding multiplier is highest. You paid $1 million for that house upgrade. You just paid it in a currency nobody shows you on the contract. The second silence is the vehicle premium. You trade 2 sensible cars for 2 nicer ones. 2 $28,000 vehicles become 2 $45,000 vehicles. The extra $34,000 in debt feels manageable. The payments are spread over 5 years, the cars are reliable, they look good. But at 8% average market returns over 20 years, that premium costs you somewhere between $200,000 and $400,000 in retirement wealth. You bought a car. You paid with retirement. And you won't find that transaction anywhere on your monthly statement. The gratification premium never appears as a line item. It shows up 25 years later where you're not looking. The third is the most emotionally complex. Children's college costs. The data on this is clear and almost nobody says it directly. The average return on a well-chosen state university education, when compared to a private one funded by 6-figure Parent Plus loans, is not significantly different in career outcomes. But it is profoundly different in the retirement wealth of the parents who signed. Families taking on $80,000 to $100,000 in Parent Plus debt to fund a more prestigious school are making a decision that costs them, not their child, hundreds of thousands in retirement capital, while their child receives a credential that statistically offers comparable career outcomes to a well-chosen public alternative. These aren't bad decisions made by careless people. They're decisions made by parents who love their children and adults doing exactly what everyone around them is doing. The problem isn't the desire, it's that nobody showed them the 30-year receipt before they signed. Before any major financial decision in your 40s, ask one question. Not, can I afford the payment? Not, do I deserve this? But, what does the 30-year receipt say? For a lump sum, multiply by 4 for a monthly cost increase. Compound it forward 20 to 25 years at market returns. Write down the actual number. Then make the decision with full information. You might still make the same choice. Some upgrades are worth it, when you've done the math and decided the trade-off is conscious and intentional. But the people who retire with $1.6 million instead of $685,000 didn't earn more. They saw the receipt. But knowing the math isn't the hard part. The hard part is what comes next. Because there's a psychological force in your 40s that numbers alone can't override. And almost nobody in financial media ever names it. Here's what nobody says about the people who choose to live differently in their 40s. It's uncomfortable. Watching everyone around you upgrade while you hold the line is a real cost. The 40s carry a social gravity that pulls toward expansion. The new house, the newer car, the out-of-state school. These aren't arbitrary choices. They're signals of arrival that your entire peer group is sending simultaneously. Resisting that gravity takes something real. But here is what also happens when you resist it. Here's a number that should permanently change how you think about every lifestyle upgrade you're considering. 18 to 24 months. That's how long it takes human beings, on average, to fully adapt to a new income level, to stop feeling the pleasure of the upgrade and return to baseline. The $1,800 a month housing upgrade that felt genuinely luxurious when you first moved in, within 2 years, it's just your house. The pleasure was real. The adaptation was inevitable. But the retirement wealth that upgrade cost? That's gone for good. Compounded into absence. That is the gratification premium in its purest form. A permanent cost traded for a temporary reward. Here is what the actual arithmetic says about that trade. If you choose to live intentionally in your 40s, maintaining your savings rate, channeling the excess margin into investments, you are trading approximately 10 years of social friction for 30 or more years of financial freedom. That trade has a beginning and an end. The freedom is indefinite. If you choose the other path, upgrading your lifestyle to match your peak decade income, you are trading 2 to 3 years of genuine pleasure from the upgrade, followed by adaptation, followed by decades of carrying costs that have permanently compressed your retirement wealth. The pleasure ends. The carrying cost doesn't. There is no mathematical version of balance here. Compounding asymmetry makes both paths feel similar in your 40s and look nothing alike by your 70s. At 65, the gap between these two choices is measured in hundreds of thousands of dollars. By 70, one of you has never checked a restaurant price in years. The other is doing arithmetic at a kitchen table, calculating whether this month's medication and the remaining 12 years on a mortgage can both be covered. Before any major financial decision this decade, try one thing. Ask the 70-year-old version of yourself to vote. Not abstractly, specifically. That person exists somewhere in your possible future right now. In one version, they're in a paid-off house, calling their grandchildren to ask what they want for the holidays, with no anxiety about the answer. In another, they're at that kitchen table, doing the math on whether both bills can be covered this month. That 70-year-old cannot undo the choices you make right now. They can't extend the compounding window. They can't earn more during the peak decade, because that decade will be gone. But you are in it, and every month that passes is a vote. The $4 rule doesn't ask what you deserve. It only counts what you decided. I want to leave you with one thought. Every high-income person who arrives at retirement with more anxiety than they expected, and the research on this is remarkably consistent, will tell you the same thing when you ask what they'd change. They never say they wish they'd earned more. They say they wish they'd been more intentional during the years when they had the most leverage. Your 40s are those years. They end. The math they create doesn't. If you're watching this and thinking, what if I've already made some of these decisions? What if the house is bought, the car is leased, and the window feels narrower than it did? That's the most important question to take seriously. Because the math of rebuilding retirement wealth after 45 is genuinely different from building it from 40. Some catch-up strategies work. Most don't. And almost nobody in financial media will tell you which is which. I made a video covering exactly that calculation. It's on screen right now. If you're in your 40s, tell me in the comments, what's the one upgrade you're most tempted to make? Let's run the $4 rule on it together. And if this kind of thinking, the real math behind the decisions we're told are normal, is what you're looking for, subscribe. This channel exists to show you the receipt before you sign.